My Sunday punch in response is, even if you think you could figure out what intentions are today, there's no way you can know what future intentions are. There's no way you can know what future leaders of any country will be thinking. And a good example that illustrates this has nothing to do with IR, has to do with divorce. Think about divorce.
Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily. Today we're diving into the world of international relations. And we got a spotlight on none other than John J. Mearsheimer, a big name in political science and international relations. Now, fair warning guys, buckle up because we're about to tackle some heavy stuff. Mearsheimer sees the future as pretty bleak, and let's just say we agree with him in that regard.
Perhaps some positive words from your end to close the conversation with?
I actually have no positive words. I think things are only going to get worse. I don't think most people understand how much trouble we're in. As I tried to make clear, I think the Russians will win in Ukraine. I think this will have negative consequences for Europe. It'll do significant damage to NATO. I think that nationalism is a growing force around the world. I think the liberal regimes that dominated during the unipolar moment in Europe are in trouble. I think if you look at the American domestic political situation, especially with regard to what's happening with Donald Trump and how he thinks about democracy, I think it's quite clear that the United States is in trouble.
But here's where it gets interesting for the message of our channel. During one of his recent seminars, he pulled out an analogy that had us nodding in agreement and scratching our heads at the same time. He used divorce to explain why states are always on the lookout to beef up their power in our chaotic global neighborhood. And you know what? It only makes sense why men are shying away from tying the knot, shying away from dating and romantic relationships. Let's talk about it. We men ain't we? Yeah. We men ain't we? Yeah.
Third assumption, which is of great importance, has to do with intentions. Remember, the first assumption was that states are the principal actors and they operate in an anarchic system, no hierarchy. Second was all states have some offensive military capability. Third assumption has to do with intentions. And there the assumption is you can never be certain about the intentions of other states. Now this is an enormously important assumption in my theory, and that's why I want to spend a couple minutes unpacking it, this assumption about intentions.
I've put the three assumptions on the screen and highlighted the third assumption in red because this is the most important assumption in this regard. But keep all the assumptions in mind so you can understand the analogy Mearsheimer is going to present to us. Let's continue.
The reason that intentions are so difficult to divine is because they're in the heads of policymakers and you can't see them. They're very different than capabilities. During the Cold War, when we used to look at the Soviet Union, we used to be trying to figure out, number one, what were Soviet capabilities? And two, what were Soviet intentions? Capabilities were never hard to figure out. We could see these material capabilities. We could count how many attack submarines, how many SS-18s, how many Foxbats, how many armored division equivalents the Soviets had. We had a really good sense of what their capabilities were. We could never figure out what their intentions were. We had huge debates as to what was inside Nikita Khrushchev's head or what was inside Leonid Brezhnev's head. Some people said X, some people said Y, others said Z. You just couldn't know because you can't see them. So intentions are very hard to divine. Now, some people would disagree with me on that. Say you can get a pretty good sense of what intentions are today. My Sunday punch in response is, even if you think you could figure out what intentions are today, there's no way you can know what future intentions are. There's no way you can know what future leaders of any country will be thinking. And a good example that illustrates this has nothing to do with IR, has to do with divorce. Think about divorce.
Notice that when he says divorce, you can hear women laughing in the background.
Has to do with divorce. Think about divorce.
This says something about how marriage, divorce, and romantic relationships are viewed in modern times. However, what Mearsheimer is about to explain is really serious. Stay focused.
When two people get married, they invariably think that the person they're marrying is wonderful. I mean, who would get married to someone you didn't think was wonderful? You think that person has benign intentions towards you, right? Well, you know we have a 50% divorce rate in America. That means that 50% of the people are guessing wrong, right? That it means that they think they're marrying a person who's going to think they're the cat's meow, as my mother would say, forever and ever. And that proves not to be the case. This is actually a very depressing thought. But if you think about it, you can never be certain that the person you're marrying won't turn out to be Attila the Hun.
This is pure gold. In Mearsheimer's analogy, the importance of understanding one's intentions is crystal clear and highlights the consequences of misjudging, especially when intentions can change unpredictably. With divorce statistics showing that 70 to 80% of divorces come from women, which resembles Mearsheimer's concept of offensive capability, and the perceived bias against men in the legal system reflecting his notion of an anarchic system. It's no coincidence that men choose to protect themselves by avoiding marriage, not approaching women, taking their talents overseas, reflecting the protective posture of states against potential threats that Mearsheimer lays out. Now, Mearsheimer is going to say something that I disagree with, but I understand where he's coming from.
Now, I want to be clear. This is not to say you can be certain that the person will turn out to be Attila the Hun, because after all, 50% of the people do live happily ever after. It's just to say you can't be certain that that person won't turn out to be Attila the Hun. And the same thing is true with regard to the intentions of states. You cannot know, I believe, what the intentions of states are now, but you certainly can't know over the long term.
My disagreement lies in the assumption that the 50% of marriages that do not end in divorce are necessarily happy marriages, which is misleading. Consider this: approximately 30% of individuals on dating apps are already married, indicating dissatisfaction or unrest within their marriages. Additionally, various surveys suggest that between 15% and 20% of marriages experience periods of sexlessness, while another 10% to 15% of couples choose separation without divorce, and approximately 7% remain together despite chronic unhappiness. Despite my appreciation for data and statistics, they often fail to capture the full complexity of human relationships. It underscores the importance of interpreting statistics within the appropriate context.
And because you can never know the intentions of other states, and you are sometimes dealing with really powerful states, what you have to do is make sure that you can protect yourself. It's a self-help world. Because again, there's no higher authority that can rescue if you get into trouble.
Now, can I get a drizzle, drizzle? Drizzle, drizzle?
Drizzle, drizzle. Drizzle, drizzle.
Man, that's where we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.